Hey there, folks. Welcome back to Succinct Psychology, aka Succinct. My name is Jaia Hendrickson, and this video is going to be a continuation of my two prior videos in Chapter 3 in Principles of Social Psychology. So, the most common approach to dealing with negative affect is to attempt to suppress, deny, or avoid it. Yet, research has found that there are clear difficulties with an approach to negative events and feelings that involves not addressing those events and feelings. For one, ignoring our problems doesn't make them go away. If we're too depressed to get any work done, we are too anxious to build good relationships with others, or we experience so much stress that we get sick, well, these would all be detrimental to our health, even if we didn't want to admit that it was occurring. And suppressing our emotions is also not a very good option, at least in the long run, because it tends to fail. Suppressing our emotions might work for a short while, but when we run out of energy, the negative emotions may shoot back up into our consciousness, and then we'll just re-experience those emotions that we've been trying to avoid. Another poor approach to attempting to escape from our problems is to engage in behaviors designed to distract us. Sometimes this approach will be successful for a short term, so we might just try distracting ourselves by going on runs, reading books, watching TV, and perhaps this might be useful. But sometimes people go to extremes to avoid self-awareness when it might be more effective to just face their troubles directly. So not only does research show that attempting to suppress our negative thoughts doesn't work, there's actually evidence of the contrary. And that's that when we're faced with troubles, it's healthy to let those negative thoughts and feelings out by expressing them, either to ourselves or to others. James Pennebaker and his colleagues have conducted many correlational and experimental studies that demonstrate the advantages to our mental and physical health by opening up versus bottling our feelings. And this research team has found that simply talking about or writing about our emotions and our reactions to negative events can provide us with substantial health benefits. In one of their studies, Pennebaker and Beal randomly assigned students to write about either the most traumatic and stressful event in their life or about something trivial. And although the students that wrote about the most traumatic event did have higher blood pressure and more negative moods directly following writing about that event, they were also less likely to visit the student center for any illnesses for 6 months following that experiment. And that was in comparison to the students that wrote about something trivial. And here's a funny little meme, me opening up to somebody, and then there's another layer below it. Don't be that person. Okay, so the process of setting goals and using our cognitive and affective capacities to reach those goals is known as self-regulation. And a big part of self-regulation is being able to regulate our emotions. People who are better at regulating their behaviors and emotions have more successful personal and social encounters. So self-regulation is a skill that we should seek to, be good at. In one classic study, Walter Mischel had children sit at a table in front of a tasty snack. So it was a marshmallow or a cookie. And what he did was he gave the children two options. One option was the children could immediately eat the snack, or they could delay gratification for a few minutes and they would receive double the amount of snacks. Of course, some children chose to immediately eat it. Some were able to hold out and receive double the amount of snacks. But when Mischel followed up with the same children from the original study, what he found was that those children that were able to self-regulate grew up to develop some highly positive characteristics. They scored higher on their SATs, their friends rated them as more socially adept, and they were better at coping with stress and frustration in comparison to the children that were not able to hold out, and they immediately ate the snack. So we see here there's some effective strategies for improving self-control. We have try focusing on one goal at a time, practice using self-control to improve your willpower, plan for situations that might break your resolve, and avoid temptation. So these are all good effective strategies that you can practice to improve your own self-control. So you've probably heard about the power of positive thinking. The idea that thinking positively helps people to meet their goals and keeps them happy, healthy, and able to effectively cope with the negative events that they experience. Well, it turns out that positive thinking really does work. People who think positively about their future, who believe that they can control their outcomes, and who are willing to open up and share with others are healthier people. So positive thinking comes in many different forms, but they are all helpful. Some researchers have focused on optimism, which is a general tendency to expect positive outcomes. And they found that optimists are happier and they experience less stress. Others have focused on self-efficacy, which is the belief in our ability to carry out actions that produce desired outcomes. And self-efficacy helps in part because it leads us to perceive that we can control the potential stressors that may affect us. Workers who have control over their environment, so able to move around furniture, or they're able to control their distractions, well, they experience less stress. And that's similar with patients in nursing homes who are able to choose their daily activities. Susan Cabasa and her colleagues have argued that the tendency to be less affected by life stressors can be characterized as an individual difference measurement that has a relationship to both self-efficacy and optimism, a measurement known as hardiness. And hardy individuals are those who are more positive overall about potentially stressful life events. They take more direct action to understand the causes of negative events, and they attempt to learn from what they can from what may be of value for the future. So taken together, these various coping strategies, including optimism, self-efficacy, perceived control, and hardiness, have been shown to provide a wide variety of positive effects on our health. Psychologists have studied hundreds of variables that influence happiness, but the most important by far, and it's one that's particularly social psychological in nature, is that people who report having positive social relationships with others, so perceived social support, also report being happier than those who report having less social support. Social support also helps us cope with stressors. Koopman and colleagues found that women who reported higher social support when they were diagnosed with cancer experienced less depression. And Ashton and colleagues found a similar buffering effect of social support for AIDS patients. And people with social support are less depressed overall, they recover faster from negative events, and they're less likely to commit suicide. One difficulty that people face when trying to improve their own well-being is that they may not always know what makes them happy. As one example, many of us think that if we had more money, we would be happier. And while yes, we do need money to afford food and adequate shelter for ourselves and our families, once we've reached a minimum level of wealth, more money does not generally buy us more happiness. And psychologists have also found that people's ability to predict their future emotional states is not very accurate. For one, people overestimate their emotional reactions to events. Although people think that positive and negative events that they experience might make huge differences in their life, and they will make at least some difference to their well-being, it's usually not as influential as we think they're going to be. So positive events tend to make us feel good, but their effects wear off pretty quickly. And the same is true for negative events. So we see up here, we have affective forecasting. Affective forecasting is predicting how much a life is likely to impact you. So people think that really good events are going to make them happy and keep them happy for a very long time, and that really bad events are going to crush them for the unforeseeable future. And that is usually not the case. Alright folks, this concludes my video in Chapter 3 in Principles of Social Psychology. This is the final video. Some of the topics we went over were emotions and well-being, stress and well-being, moods and emotions in our social lives, and how to feel better, so coping with negative emotions. I hope you guys learned a thing or two, and I hope to see you guys next time.